What's going on, everybody? This is Drew and JC. We are here with another episode of Comedy Watchers, the podcast that has grown significantly on the Watchers Digital Network. Tonight, we have a really cool, really interesting guest that I'm looking forward to chatting with for a bit. And you know the drill. I'll hit the intro and then we'll talk to him. And tonight, we're being joined by Hypno Marc, and we're going to throw it over to him right now and kind of let him introduce himself to everybody.
Hey guys and audience, thank you for having me tonight. I get a chance once again to talk about my favorite subject other than me, and that's hypnosis. And I've been doing this a long time. I've been doing hypnosis over 50 years, and I just absolutely love what it does. I love helping people to do amazing things in their lives, but I especially love being on stage and really coming to a place in the comedy world as a comic hypnotist that changes comedy and people's experience of comedy. Because you go to a normal comedy club or show, you're going to have a series of stand-ups, and they're the stars. When you come on my show, I'm just the director, and my audience becomes the stars. And so that's where I want to start from tonight, because there's so many questions that people have about hypnosis. You know, one of the major ones that people want to know, is it real? Hell yes. Number two, can they get stuck in hypnosis? Not in over 4,000 years, except for last night when I did a show, and well, he'll come out of it in 6 or 7 days. But other than that, it is fun. It is actually the place that most people get their first exposure to hypnosis. And that's where I got my first exposure. I was 11 years old when I saw my first comedy hypnosis show. Blew my mind. And I've been pursuing it ever since, actually.
Yeah, that's super cool. I've always wanted to attend a show like this, but I've never actually had it's never presented itself. So it's something that I'm super open to, and I think it does look a lot of fun anytime that I've ever seen clips. Ironically, there was a hypnosis comedian at my prom, but I was too cool to go to that, so I didn't participate in any of that, in those shenanigans. I had to stay home to watch SmackDown that night. So
you missed a heck of an opportunity, Drew, because actually from April to June, it's a crazy season between proms and grads. I'm traveling all over the country, and the beauty about what I do is it gives me the opportunity to travel not only around the country but around the world and do venues and do casinos and clubs and corporate events and private parties and fairs, and you pretty much name it. I've been out there and done it. Ships, the whole deal. It is a fun and exciting thing, and it really gives me an opportunity to get a sense of people. And what I find is, generally everybody's the same. They want to laugh, they want to escape the craziness of their lives, and it's been, so encouraging to hear people say, "Wow, I haven't laughed that hard in my life," and so it is amazing to me, and it is really rewarding.
Well, you said that when you were like 11, you witnessed this for yourself, and it kind of set you on this path. I'm curious, like, is there anything that you remember from that experience that jumps out to you to this day?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I was 11 years old. It was a scout dinner, to give you an idea, and I saw the stage hypnotist, and he was doing things that we can no longer do in the stage world. We used to do things like what we call the human bridge, where literally I hypnotize somebody, make them stiff as a board, put them between two chairs, the tops of the chairs, not the bottoms, and stand on them. Now we can't do that anymore because there are people who were doing it who didn't know how to do it properly and were causing injuries, and our insurance companies don't allow it. And things like eating onions and think it was the best tasting apples that they ever had, or they're sticking pins through needles through hands, flames. These are the kind of things that used to be done as a demonstration of the power of the human mind. And what happened was that I saw people up there, parents of friends of mine who I knew well, and knew that they would not be doing any of this stuff had they not been hypnotized. And back in the day when I started, there was no internet. And so I went to every college library, every occult bookstore, any place I could find something that would teach me, give me enlightenment on hypnosis in the process. And so I did that for a number of years. And I was 16 years old and I was on a youth trip. And we're sitting around one Saturday afternoon and I hypnotized my first volunteer. And he did all the crazy stuff I asked him to do. Now, being self-taught, I didn't know whether he was faking it or real until 3 nights later. I had done what's called a post-hypnotic suggestion. I touched my left ear with my right hand. You're going to bark like a dog. Well, I'm talking to this girl next to me, and I accidentally do this. He starts barking like a dog at dinner, and I go, shit, I actually did it. And everybody's looking at me, and they're laughing because they know what happened. And I haven't stopped hypnotizing people ever since. So, yeah, it's fun. It's exciting. And people say to me, is it a gift? And it's not. It's something that's trainable. And every hypnotist learns it somewhere by some teacher or some methodology. Today, it's all over the internet. And that's somewhat dangerous because, people, as I say, I can train a monkey to do hypnosis in about 15 minutes. It's what do you do after you put them into hypnosis? How do you get them out of hypnosis? And these are the things that people don't understand, that if you want to study hypnosis, you want to become a hypnotist, then it's important to go and get trained with an expert trainer, somebody who knows the business of hypnosis, knows how to work with it, because you never know what you're going to open up on a stage. You never know what people's traumas are. And you may accidentally trigger that trauma. And if you're not trained as a hypnotist, and I really recommend that every stage hypnotist get clinical training and every clinical hypnotist do stage training, because if you don't know how to do those things, you're going to have a problem at some point in your career. And so for me, it was going through that process, ultimately studying with some of the top trainers in the world throughout my life. I continue to study with people who are peers or friends, because in the process, things do change. And what happens is, as I said, people first come to hypnosis most of the time through the stage shows. They see it, they experience it. And when I get off the stage, people say to me, can you help me? And whatever their issue is, the answer is probably, yeah, I have a product for that. I have a program for that. You can see me individually. And I work with clients all over the world. I have clients in Australia, New Zealand, Germany, UK, all over Canada and the US. And I specialize in trauma work in my clinical practice, but my stage practice, it's across the board, literally from schools to adult shows and everything in between. And the venue and the audience determines what that show is going to be. And it never crosses the line, So from that standpoint, it's entertaining, because these are people that who are up on that stage. It's these people, how they behave in their normal life. And what they're doing is they're sharing their real personalities with you. The stuff that would happen if you had a couple of drinks and loosened up and just opened up to people. And so that's what makes it fun, because, as a stage hypnotist, as a comedy hypnotist, I never really know what's going to come out of somebody's mouth. I never know what they're really going to do. And I've got to be prepared for just about everything. And as I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of stuff, and I still find myself being surprised every once in a while by what's coming up in that show.
Yeah, I imagine it probably takes really good improvisational skills
Oh,
to do
absolutely.
that.
Improv is a huge part of it. I come into a show, I have a skit set up, what I'm going to do, what I want to do, and sometimes that volunteer group is going to just take me in another complete direction, and I'm going to go there because that's where the gold is. That's where the comedy gold is. You and the thing about being a comedy hypnotist is you've got to be funny. People are coming there to laugh. And you've got to create that laughter. You've got to have a sense of what your audience is, where they are, where they are politically, where they are economically, what makes them tick. And that's the best part of what I do, because I get to interact with people and I get to know them and I get to have a chance to sit down and really understand the different parts of the world as I travel around.
Yeah, I have it might be a silly question, or maybe not, but you had said, about the first time that you had ever done hypnosis, and then, you touched your ear and you had your friend barking like a dog in that situation. I'm curious, considering that you're on a stage and you're doing a show and you're being brought into I don't know, say a prom or something. So you're dealing with minors in that situation. If for some reason they didn't pop out of that post hypnotic, I don't know, state of mind that they're in, and something happens, like 3 days later, are you like liable for that legally, or
Well,
is there?
first of all, understand that you can't get stuck in hypnosis.
Okay.
That's number one. Okay. Can you get stuck in sleep? That's what I ask people all the time. Can you get stuck in sleep? No, you can't get stuck in sleep. You can't get stuck in hypnosis. So before I leave the stage, I make sure that every one of my volunteers is functioning, that we've restored them to the state that they were in when they stepped on my stage. Period. Everything else has to function, because yeah, look, the last thing, I'll do a skit where, for example, I'll remove the number 4 from their memory. Number 4 doesn't exist, and I ask them to count their fingers, and the next thing you know, they've got 11 or 12, depending on how I set it up. And the last thing you want is to have somebody like an accountant not being able to use the number 4. It just doesn't exist. You don't want that liability. And people say, are these long term? Are these lasting? And the answer is yeah, they can be. And that's the work that I do in my clinical practice, is to make permanent changes in people's lives. So it's very powerful. And yes, you can make a mistake if you're not properly trained and know to absolutely remove all of those suggestions that you've given and allow people to come back to the state that they were in. Plus, what I do in my shows is I give them a positive suggestions to be able to make positive changes in their lives. Because the reality is, and this is, my book is Perception Equals Reality, is that what we focus on becomes our reality. And so if you're worried about not being able to do something, for example, I'm afraid of failure. Well, and you say to yourself, I'm not going to fail. The human mind doesn't hear the negating word not. And all it processes is, I'm going to fail. So it's that self-limiting belief that I'm able to help my volunteers on the stage and give them the gift for being as part of my show, that gift. If they want to change a habit or a vice, they want to drop it, they are empowered to do that. And that's part of the gift that I give volunteers in the show.
So, in order to make any type of long-lasting change, they say weight loss or smoking or something like that. That takes a cooperation from the person going under hypnosis to also want to achieve that goal, or it wouldn't necessarily work.
Well, let's put it this way. First of all, the term under hypnosis is one that I don't like to use, because there's a presupposition there that I'm powerful. And what the reality is that this is a cooperative venture, that You need to be engaged. I'm not going to make you do something that you don't want to do. I can't. Hypnosis is not mind control, and you'll hear me say in my shows, it's not mind control. Simply because if it was mind control, I'd stand at some ATM, you'd give me your PIN number, I'd be living in Fiji. We wouldn't even have this discussion. It's a state of super focus and super concentration. And so what happens is I want you to be able to want to make those change. And when you're ready to make those change, hypnosis is the most powerful, fastest methodology of making any change in your life. Look, if I can get somebody on my stage to forget their name, lose the number 4, hold their shoe in their hand and not know it's there, no matter how much money I put on the table in front of them, then imagine what I can do for somebody who's looking to remove trauma in their life, or a fear or a phobia, or want to stop smoking or lose weight. Those things are relatively simple. And it takes actually much more work to get somebody into a state on my stage to be able to do the fun things that they do on that stage, to share their personalities, to become a superhero, to whatever it is that I'm asking them to do in that moment, that they accept it immediately as part of their reality.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes absolute sense. I guess there's a lot of factors, I guess, stage fright or just social anxieties or anything like that would prevent somebody from being super comfortable and maybe at a comedy show versus like directly seeking you out. I'm curious, is there like, they almost go hand in hand considering what you're doing with your craft, but is there ever any friction between clinical work versus the comedy world that you also participate in?
Yeah, there has been a huge change over the last several years, that the clinicians are understanding the comedy hypnotist in a very different way. And I'm one of those people. There aren't a lot of us who walk down both paths. So what I often have said in the past to clinical hypnotists is that, very simply, if it wasn't for the stage hypnotist, none of you people would have a job, because people wouldn't know about hypnosis. And in fact, there have been periods of time in history where hypnosis was looked down upon and was relegated to the curb. And it was the stage hypnotists who kept it alive. And so ultimately, they came to understand that. Now, I present at hypnosis conferences. In fact, I just came back from the world's largest hypnosis conference in Las Vegas, Hypno Thoughts Live. And I've done presentations there. And one of the presentations I did a number of years ago was why clinical hypnotists need to have stage hypnosis training. And there's a lot of reasons for it. But the most important reason I share with them is that, look, you go and do a 15 or 20-minute talk at the Elks Club, the Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary lunch, whatever it is, and they ask you to do a 20-minute talk, you don't have time to do what is commonly called a progressive muscle relaxation. And you're going to bore the hell out of your audience. And they're not going to want to deal with you. But if you go up there and you talk about the power of the mind, and you can do what we call an instant induction, and quite literally, in less than 30 seconds, I can drop somebody into deep hypnosis. And if I can do that, demonstrate a couple of fun things about that person sharing with the audience, nothing brings business to a clinician like a demonstration of that type. And so that's the fun part about it. And when it comes down to it, the clinicians begin to understand that they don't need to take themselves too seriously. That's the one joy about being a stage hypnotist. I get to laugh with my people. I get to enjoy my volunteers as much as my audience does. And as I said, I can go down a certain path, and I never know what the response is going to be. And sometimes it really takes me apart, and I start laughing and laughing hard. So That's one of the things that I think what we're seeing more and more of is hypnotists across the board, clinical or stage, begin to understand that we're all in the same industry. What we're all doing is looking to raise the bar and understand that we're looking for the best people to come forward to become hypnotists, those people who are helpers, who are healers, who want to make a difference in people's lives. And that difference that I make as a comedy hypnotist is for the 90 minutes they're with me, they get to laugh, and there's nothing better than laughter for raising endorphins and just allowing people to de-stress. You know, people are under this incredible stress and anxiety in their lives, and it makes sense. So when they come out to see a show, you know, I travel all around the country. I'll be in Grants Pass, Oregon in the end of September 28th, doing a show out there. And it's amazing to hear people who come up to me after that show and say, I haven't laughed that hard ever. And I'll go back out there a year later and they'll come back up and they say, you know, before the show, they'll see me and they'll say, I had to tell 6 other people about this show because nobody would believe what I saw or what my friend did. And that's the best part of what I do is that kind of talk and that kind of, you know, people saying, yeah, I laughed till I cried.
All right, cool. On that note, you
for comedy.
Right.
I want to back up though, real quick here. And you had said that I'm looking at this from the clinical point of view, that the fastest way to making change is through hypnosis, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm going to come at this from a different point of view because I'm not saying it's my point of view, but I'm going to come at it from if that is the case, why is hypnosis not the main prescribed method for treatment?
Yeah, I hear you. And I'm fortunate that I have 9 PhD level psychotherapists who are past clients. Okay. These are people who had their access to every talk therapy there is. The model that psychology and clinical social workers tends to use is one that let me go back to where my area of expertise is. Okay. A lot of the talk therapy I specialize in trauma, PTSD, sexual trauma, sexual abuse, and addictions. And when you look at that area, you get to a place where people, every time they retell their story, they do 2 things. It re-traumatizes them, number one, and it reignites what we call the neural pathways in the brain. So what happens is that a trauma doesn't necessarily have to be a big thing, although very often it is, that it starts to grow and expand in the neural pathways, and it affects the emotions and begins to encompass everything in their life. And they don't want to retell that story. They don't want to relive the trauma. Trauma takes that fast to happen. Why should it take longer than that to resolve it? Why should it take months and years to resolve it? The reality is that it shouldn't. And the problem is, in the clinical world, and I don't look, clinicians are great sources of referral to me. The talk therapists, the social workers, they're great sources of referral because they hit a wall with their client that they just can't get over. And literally in 1 or 2 sessions, I'm able to make that happen, make that change happen and stick. Why? Because one is understanding that the subconscious mind is running a program, and its sole purpose, its main directive is to protect us. And it thinks it's doing that, but it's doing it in a way that is flawed. And it will continue to run that program until the program is overwritten or rewritten. My work as a clinical hypnotist in the trauma world is moving them from being a victim to a survivor to a thriver. Because in order to survive that trauma, you had to have resources that you're not even aware of. But once you're able to tap into and understand that, yes, I have those resources, and how did your body and subconscious mind know how to do all of that to keep you alive in a trauma? When you start to see that you have resources and you're not seeing yourself any longer as a victim, it shifts the discussion, it reframes the way the human mind works, and just takes people into to a new space and saying, wow, that is true. I did survive. And I didn't see it that way. And I no longer have to see myself as a victim. Does that? I hope that answers the question, JC.
It does. Absolutely.
We kind of hit this. We have another show. It's called Sasquatchers, and on that show, we talk about metaphysical, paranormal, all of that, like the fringe side of the world. And so I'm going to probably I'm gonna hit you with some Sasquatcher style questions in a couple of moments, but I don't want to.
Have you ever hypnotized a Sasquatch?
I haven't hypnotized.
$1 million question.
I haven't hypnotized a Sasquatch. However, when I do my show in the Pacific Northwest, I do have a Sasquatch skit that I use. And so, you know, you go where what you work with in the regions that you're playing in. So yes, the answer to the question is I do play in that arena. You know, where I'm performing in Oregon is in Southwest Oregon. There are places. In fact, I was recently on a hike with my girlfriend to Sasquatch Trap on one of the hikes up there. And there's there's signs, beware Sasquatch. There's sightings reported all the time. She's about 45 minutes outside of Cave Junction. Cave Junction is about the space where most of the Sasquatch sightings are in that space. So yes, let's bring it on.
Okay, no, I'll hit you with the metaphysics here in a second. But I actually had a couple more, comedy specific questions, just because I find everything you're saying super fascinating and interesting, and kind of how it fits into that.
Why did you mention Sasquatchers then?
Because I'm gonna get there. You interrupted. You brought Sasquatch up. What? There was a lead in. You buried the lead.
The lead never existed.
It never does. You kind of answered a little bit when you said that that when you're in the Pacific Northeast that you or Northwest. you do the Sasquatch skit. So with like typical stand-up, a lot of times acts are kind of revolving and changing, and people are working on their hours or whatever. I was curious, you had said that you did a show and then somebody came back and told you that they told like 6 friends, you have to see this show. So you played that same area. What do you do on stage to differentiate when you're hitting those, those venues or areas and towns?
There's a couple parts of this question. And I think that the question that you're asking is one that most stand-ups have a difficulty with, because you see stand-up and you go from city to city to city with the stand-up, you're going to see the same routine, the same skit set, because it takes a long time to write stand-up jokes and to craft them well and to really hone them in and make them hit. And so once stand-up has that set, they don't want to leave it too quickly, because it's a huge amount of work. In my world, it's very simple. A lot of hypnotists tend to do the same skits, and that they do from show to show to show. And I'm not going to say that I don't do that. However, there's 2 parts of my world that makes that different. Number one is I'm not having the same people on my stage, so I'm not going to get the same reaction. It's going to change. Number 2, I get bored easily. So I have 400, 500, 600 skits, whatever it is that I can throw in and shift to and pivot out of anytime I need to. So if I'm at a location, let's say I'm doing, 4 shows run, okay? And so 3 of those shows are going to be a standard PG style show, and one of those might be an adult style show. And so the 3 shows are going to be, they could be the same because the odds of having the same people in the audience night after night after night is not good. Okay. They're going to change. Number 2, even if I did, it's not the same show, as I said, because I have different volunteers. But number 3, I want variety. I want people who are going to come in. I want to make it, I'm really careful about making sure that I'm not wearing the same outfit that I wore the last time that I was at that venue. Number 2, because when I see the video, I want to see something different on me. I want to see a different look. Number 2, I don't want to do the same skits because I want people to come in and say, well, what's he going to do tonight? I don't want my volunteers to think, well, this is the skit he's going to do. I don't want that. However, we're going to find that that's not typical of comedy hypnotists. Because, again, when you have your craft, you have your timing, you have your skit set, you know how that skit set's going to roll, you know where you want to go with it, and you know that the audience enjoys it. Because sometimes, we do things on stage, no matter who you are as a performer, because that's what the audience wants. They want to see that. They want to see that skit. They want to see people losing the number 4 or not being their favorite body part growing to huge proportions. Yeah, they want to see that because it made them laugh the last time, and they've got new people, and they don't know how the new people are going to react.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, to follow up on that, the comedy world is, to put it politely, fickle. Like everybody, you're constantly fighting for stage time. They're sketch comedy versus stand up, or something like a lot of, you might be adjacent to this a little bit with comedic magicians. Everybody kind of dumps on each other and thinks that their craft is kind of the best of all of them. And so I was curious if you run into any kind of friction for, like other comedians, or, if you're ever, kind of bumping around, somebody who's strictly a stand-up or something, and you're in a green room, and do you ever deal with any of that face to face, or has it been kind of smooth for you?
One of the things that I do, and that's how you and I connected, is I put out an ad, because one of the things I realized is starting stand-ups have a really difficult time getting stage time. It just is, it's hard to do. And what I'm looking for is, I'm looking to, in the hypnosis world, I'm a believer of cooperation between the players. Very simple. There's more than enough work for all of us to go around. More than enough work. Now, not everybody in the comedy world is going to be funny, plain and simple. I mean, I went through a whole bunch of people who responded to my call for an opener for this show in Grants Pass, and I went through a lot of flunkers, and these are people who claim to be doing this for a while. And I said to people, they'd show me their film. And I said, how long was it for your first laugh? And where were your laughs? And because I want to see people improve their craft. When I'm in the green room with a professional, there's a respect. They have a job. Look, I get out on that stage and I'm doing 90 minutes. That's a long set, period. That's a long set. Most stand-ups, they're doing, the opener is going to do, I'm not talking about the MC. the MC is going to do 15 minutes. The opener is going to do 5. The next guy's going to do 10 or 15. You know, by the time you get to the feature will do 45 to an hour. I'm doing 90 minutes. And I've got to carry the whole show. And if I don't have my volunteers, number one, if they don't go into hypnosis, I'm in trouble. And that's not a place I want to be. Number two, if I don't have comedy chops to make things funny, to add, to pick up on what's going on, to understand how comedy works, the arc of a show, because there is an arc of a show. You know, there's an arc of a show in 2 ways for me. One is there's an arc of a show because I need to have my volunteers at a certain level of hypnosis. And like sleep, hypnosis is not flat. It goes up and down. So they go into deeper and lesser states of hypnosis. And I need to be able to manage that by my skit set. When I bring them in, I have to manage things like physicality, because very often on my stage, they're dancing around and they're doing physical stuff. And a lot of these people are not in the best of shape to be doing that. So I need to watch my volunteers, because when you're on my stage and you're in hypnosis, you're my responsibility. Your safety is my responsibility. And so you're going to hear me to say that to people that, look, if you're not physically able to be active up on my stage, please enjoy my show from out there. And I will tell you, more than 85% of the time, people in the audience go out in hypnosis, and I'm going to use them in the audience.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, you know, I didn't even consider that there might be somebody that is bound to have a heart attack while they're doing jumping jacks or something on stage.
Yeah, you know, these are things that, as a professional comedy hypnotist, I need to be fully aware of all the time. I need to know, you know, even if somebody appears to me in good shape, you never know, and stuff does happen. It happens. This is life, and you better be. You know, I've got 40 years of emergency medical services as an EMT. You know, there's nothing that I haven't seen in that world. You know, and so there's nothing that's going to happen on my stage that I'm not prepared to handle. I'm fortunate in that respect. However, every hypnotist is not the same. Every performer is not the same. It's the same as doing a stand-up and somebody in the audience has a heart attack. What do? And you can't exactly call that, you know, you can't start making jokes about that. It doesn't land well. You know,
not right away.
It's hard even on the back end of that deal to do that. You know, so that's one of the challenges to come back from. And so when we go back to, and I want to circle back to your question about, have I had a problem with people in the green room? No, because when I'm the feature, when I'm the headliner, I'm making the decision on the opener. I'm bringing the opener on because the opener, I need certain things on that for that opener to do for my audience. So they're rolling with me. So I don't typically have that problem when I go to the clubs, and I go to clubs pretty often because I want to see who's up and coming in an area that I'm going to be in. You know, if I have a free night, if I've traveled in and it's not a show night for me, and there's an open mic or something, I'm going to go down to that open mic. I'm going to see it. I may even stand up and do some stuff, you know, because I like to play in the stand up, you know, and do every once in a while, do for myself as well, because it helps me keep my comedy chops up, and allows me to play and just figure out things on timing, because timing is important as well as being on a stage hypnotist.
Yeah, right on. What do you look for in an opener in that regard? Because I know with stand-up, you know, you never really want somebody that's using the same material as you. So considering your show, who are you bringing in to warm that crowd up that's different?
I have a very specific set of rules that my opener must follow. I don't want them interacting with the crowd individually. That's my world. I don't want you talking about hypnosis. That's my world. Not making jokes about hypnosis. That's my world. Do your set, do your thing. We'll get that crowd laughing. What I'm looking for is somebody who is out there, who can take an audience, rev them up, and deliver them to me already hot. Look, for a long time, I've worked without having anybody open. I come out dead cold and work my crowd and get them up on my stage. And it's not uncommon for me to have a large enough stage where I can put 30 people on that stage and hypnotize 30 people. In a comedy club, I'm lucky to get 12 or 15 on a stage because the stages are small. But that's the world I live in. I can go out in the street and hypnotize one person and make a show out of it. It's not what I want to do, and it's not what I'm paid to do when I get to a comedy club. But there are techniques that I use, that other hypnotists use, that ensures that we are finding the best volunteers. What we know is that if we look at the bell curve of people's hypnotizability, there's only two people in the world I can't hypnotize. Those who are dumber than a box of rocks, or those who are stoned out of their face. Other than that, if you can learn, you can be hypnotized. Now, part of that is you want to be hypnotized, but the other part is that I need to be able to see that. I need to see right from the get-go who my volunteers are going to be. And there's a lot of ways that we do that. But we know that 10% of the audience, any audience, statistically, are good volunteers. They're highly susceptible to suggestibility testing, to suggestion on a stage, and we'll go into hypnosis deeply and be a great show. So if I've got 100 people in my audience and I've got 10 seats up there, my job is to get the 10 hottest volunteers and get them on my stage one way or another. And that's what I'm going to do.
Hey, that kind of brings something up for me real quick. Is it possible to be super willing to be hypnotized, but incredibly difficult to be hypnotized? It's like
yes.
You have some kind of mental block without even realizing it?
Oh, absolutely. Happens all the time. I have people who say, I did a show in Pennsylvania, probably it was before COVID, so it's like 2018. And it was a group that I had done a lot of work for. They had they had different groups within their organization, and they had this young adults group, 21 to 29-year-olds, and they had this big party, and they were celebrating, and there was a lot of drinking going on. So there's 250 people, and I'm doing the show not on a stage, but on the floor, the same level of the tables, which is a challenge anyway. And I call for volunteers. I get 20 people up on my chairs, and 3 idiots who are drunk out of their face come up and start waking my volunteers up as I'm hypnotizing them. So I send all my volunteers back. I tell them, look, plain and simple, if it happens again, I'm out of here. I've already been paid. It doesn't matter. You've paid me a lot of money to do this show. Control your idiots, is basically what I said to them. Bring a whole another group up there. And I sent off a number of people, 3 or 4 of the 20, because they were either not at a level of hypnosis that I wanted them to be, or weren't in hypnosis. So one guy sees me at the bar afterwards, and he says, I really wanted to be hypnotized. I said, I know. He said, but you sent me off. I said, I know. He said, why? I said, because you were faking. He said, well, how do you know? I said, damn, I'm a professional hypnotist. If I don't know you're faking, I got a bigger problem. And we're at the bar, and I literally drop him into hypnosis while we're talking, lay him out on the floor, does some crazy stuff, comes back up, and I said, and that's how you hypnotize somebody. And he looks at me, he says, how the hell did you do that? Because this time, he wasn't trying to go into hypnosis. You see, the biggest challenge that people have is not listening to my directions. My directions are really simple. I don't want you to try to go into hypnosis. I don't want you to try not to go into hypnosis. All I want you to do is focus your attention on do exactly what I say to do. Period. So when that happens, when people allow themselves to go on the journey, they make the best volunteers. And you'll notice I said, you'll not hear me say subjects, because they're not subjects. subjects implies royalty, kingdom. You know, they're under me. No, these are my volunteers. These are the people that make my show every single night that I get on that stage. And it's a matter of respect, my volunteers, because they are important. They do make the show.
Yeah, it's a super good look, overall, I think, to kind of have on it, that outlook that, there's ebb and flow. I mean, there's, give and take in that situation. I was curious, JC, do you have any comedy questions before we get weird? No, he's just shaking his head. So, okay. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's get a little weird.
I was muted. I'm sorry. I was talking. I said, no, go ahead and kick it in the weird mode.
All right, cool. Give me 1 second here. Take a drink of my Pepsi Zero. Yeah, all right. So, in our other world, there's a lot of stuff that can go hand in hand with hypnosis, and there's a lot of things that I've read over the years. Let's just start. Pull something here. Past life regression. Have you ever done it?
Do it a lot. I have a program that I offer. It's called Soul Key Therapy. It's a 5.5 hour, 6 hour hypnosis session where I do past life work. One of my favorite activities is group past life, and I've done it. I probably do 4 or 5 of those shows a year. And they're one of my favorites because, number one, I'm taking 40 or 50 people through a journey into past life. And in that process, there are times that we heal trauma that is generational, that is in DNA, that is brought forward through past life. Now, you have to understand that when I started doing hypnosis, I didn't believe in any of this. It was all bullshit to me. And I'm the first guy to say it. I didn't. If I couldn't see it and prove it scientifically, it didn't exist in my world. I had a good friend of mine who is a wonderful clinical and stage hypnotist, and she's a psychic and medium. And we're talking one day, and I said to her, Gail, I'm really amazed at your gifts. And she's got amazing gifts. And I said, but I don't believe in any of this shit. But I see what you do. And she turns to me and says, one day you're going to realize how much power you actually have. So I'm going to roll forward about 3 or 4 years. And I'm doing a clinical hypnosis session with a client that I knew pretty well. And I, at the time, was doing something which we call regression to cause. Well, the next thing I know, this woman's in the 14th century speaking a language I know she doesn't know and I do not understand. And bang. I put in the suggestion that you also speak English, you know it. And she gives me the situation that she finds herself in. This is the first time she ever experienced that problem. We resolve it right there. Next thing I know, we're done. Okay. I called my friend up. I said, you're not going to believe what happened. This is what I did. Tell me I did it right. She said, I told you know what was going to happen. I go into a number of years later. I do my first one of my early past life regressions. I've got 40 people in that session. A woman comes in with a cane and a lame leg. And we do this past life. And she comes back and I debrief everybody in the group simultaneously, so that they're sharing because what happens is I find that it's an amazing number of times that somebody in the group has a soul connection to somebody else in the group that they didn't know when they came in. So I'm doing it, and she responds back, and her past life that she came to, she was a Native American in the early 1800s, and she describes a location with enough information and a date that we're able to figure out about a specific, very small battle. And she was shot in the leg with an arrow. Now, the thing that's important to understand here is that her physicians, her neurologists, her orthopedists said there was no medical reason that she should have this lameness in her leg. We go back to cause. She tells me her story. I put her right back into hypnosis, resolve the matter, allow her to take forward the learnings, leave the pain and disability behind. She gets up and walks out of the thing without her cane. Calls me 6 months later and says, I don't know what you did, but my doctors are amazed because I don't walk with a cane anymore. Now, that's rare, but it shares with me the power of it. Now, I've had my own past life experiences. Subsequently, I've gone through many, many past life works with other hypnotists. I never, ever know what I'm going to find. And it's always fascinating to me. I could go on with stories. I did a past life regression for a group of shamans, and this woman comes out of hypnosis, immediately grabs her journal book and starts drawing pictures. And she draws these pictures of these alien life forms. And her past life had taken her back to a time in Egypt. The teacher of these shamans in one of her past lives, and was going through a past life, went through that workshop as well with me. She was also an Egyptian priestess, and she asked this woman to show her the pictures. Woman shows her the pictures. This woman, the priestess, the head of the teacher for the shamans, pulls up on her phone photographs of hieroglyphs that she had taken when she was in Egypt. They were so identical that it blew everybody's mind to see this connection. So there are things that happen in past life regression work that I don't try to explain it. I accept it for what it is.
Oh, that's wild. That's really cool that you had that. So I'll move on from that real quick, and I'll jump into one of my other favorite topics, and that is restoring memories of alien abductions. Have you ever?
I have not.
No.
I have not. And one of the things and this is an area that's really somewhat tricky, and it falls into the area of forensic psychology and forensic hypnosis. And it's an area that has to be tread on lightly, because it's really easy to accidentally implant a non-existent memory, a false memory. And that's one of the reasons that law enforcement and courts don't accept forensic hypnosis as being valid for testimony, because it's so easy to implant it. What we do know is this, that if we think of the human mind sort of like a hard drive, that from before we're born until the moment we die, everything that happens in our lives is recorded in that space. And it is actually recorded in the body. It's what we call somatically mapped into the body. And the subconscious mind knows, like a hard drive, knows where to find all those little bits of information, all those little experiences to call on. And so what happens in that place is that, I'm not saying that those experiences don't exist, because there's nothing for me to believe that they don't. That's not an area that I've ever done any work in, and it's not an area that I would tend to do work in.
Okay. One of the things that got me into that is this book. It's from, I think, 1984, somewhere around there. It's called Intruders. And man, the author's name is escaping me right now as I'm trying to tell the story. But he was essentially an art student who started to investigate UFO abductions, and so he had a couple of books before this, and one of the subjects, or I don't know, volunteers, as you put it, that he was working with at the time, was going through like all of these super intense experiences, and then they spent over the course of a couple of years working through them. But even though he made like a huge impact in what I consider to be kind of classic paranormal studies, a lot of people kind of look on his work as kind of amateur or untrustworthy, because he didn't come from a place of practice or knowledge. As you had mentioned earlier, you're self-taught, but there are ways that people can go kind of learn how to do this properly, and he kind of didn't do that, so it created like this air of falsehood in a lot of his research. So I don't know if that's anything that you're ever kind of into reading in your free time or whatever, but the book is called Intruders. It's a real, not real, whatever. It's actually kind of just fascinating beginning to end, regardless, if you can pull yourself away from that.
Drew, one of the things that that I've come to understand in life is there are so many. The universe is so large that the statistical probability of there not being other life forms out there is nil. There has to be. We could not be the only planet that supports a life form. And so does that open the door to possibilities? Yeah, it opens the door to possibilities. Am I open to those possibilities? Sure. I don't see why it wouldn't happen. And when we talk about self-taught, yeah, initially I was self-taught, and I had studied, as I said, I had studied and certified with preeminent hypnotists in the world to learn my art and my craft and the science of hypnosis, because there's a lot of science involved here. We're talking about the functioning of the mind and how the brain works and what the relationships are, the chemistry that's involved. And what we know is that we understood this 4,000 years ago. The Egyptians and the Greeks had, if you look at the pyramids, there were 2 chambers in the pyramids, and the only one that most people talk about is the burial chamber. But inside, there was also a thing called the sleep chamber, and it was in that sleep chamber that they went through meditation and chanting, which was a form of hypnosis. And those people came back out healed. The mind has got the incredible ability to heal every part of the body. It knows exactly how to do that. And very often, infirmity, illness, dis-ease, which is dis-ease, is the result of carrying trauma or carrying experiences and not having the way to release it. Hypnosis allows that to happen.
Awesome. Right on. We are hitting that hour mark, and we always like to end it there, just to save you some time in your evening. And
on that note, we have to head to our sleep chambers.
Right. So we always, leave the last couple of moments to the guests to promote any upcoming dates, all of your links, anything that you have, coming up that you want anybody's eyes on. I do on the bottom of our ticker for our video watchers. I have your link there, but we do have a pretty large portion that is an audio only. So go ahead and plug your stuff.
Absolutely. I'm going to be, as I said, I've got 2. I do a lot of private shows. I've got 2 public shows coming up in the next several months. On September 28th, I'm going to be in Grants Pass, Oregon at Wild River Pub for a show on September 28th. If you want tickets for that, go to 541tickets.com. My website is hypnomarc.com. I'm happy to answer questions for anybody. You want to book a show, you can do it through that. And of course, my book, Perception Equals Reality, User's Guide to Hacking Your Own Mind, is a very powerful book that's very readable and gives you actionable steps to change the way you think, change the outcomes in your life. That's available on Amazon and Kindle. And, again, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity. I always love talking about it. And, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Reach me at show@hypnomarc, Marc's with a C.com. And I answer everything that comes at me. So looking forward to hearing from your guests, your listeners, your watchers. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys. It's been a fun night.
Awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Definitely hit them up, everybody. With that, we will play the outro, and we will see everybody next time.
The preceding program has been brought to you by the Watchers Podcast Network. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends to help grow our network. Check us out on all social media platforms, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, thanks for your support.